Coast. Okay. So good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. Beverly Poole here from Aspire for Business, and David Taylor, Managing Director of DNA6. David is an author and a communications specialist working with a lot of local enterprise partnerships along the South Coast. He's worked with the NHS and also in central government. And we're absolutely delighted to be bringing these ongoing webinars about digital leadership, which is this whole, as we've been talking about previously, area that companies and individuals need to sort of get their head around moving forward, certainly this year, as COVID comes to be lifted. So what are we talking about today? So who are your customers, basically, isn't that right, David? So it's all about who your customers are, how old they are, what they're looking at. David's the expert, so he's going to bring in his comments in a moment. And today we'll be talking about building a multi-generational stakeholder plan, which all sounds very complicated. But when David explains it, it's actually very easy to take on board. So I'm going to pass the stick over to David to kick off with this morning. So welcome, David.
Thank you very much, Beverly, for the kind introduction. So I'm going to kick straight off. So Beverly, you quite rightly talked about your customers, but I think it's much wider than that. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to take it right back. So if you're in a business and you're running a business, your business interfaces with human beings. I know we live in a digital world and there's lots of robots and all sorts of chatbots and things like that. But at the end of the day, there are 7-point-something billion people on the planet. Yeah. And if you run a business, your job is to be able to communicate with those human beings.
Yes.
What we know, though, is that depending on when you were born, where you were born, your education and access to the internet, that will shape the way that you look at the world and, in fact, how you communicate. So let's break it down. We have what is generally known as 6 different generations living in the world now. Mm-hmm. And these are quite blunt generalizations because clearly there will be people of all different shapes and sizes and persuasions and outlooks, and some people are introverts and some people are extroverts. However, for simplicity's sake, it's useful to break down these different audiences because then at least it creates a narrative and helps you as a business owner understand exactly who your stakeholders are. So first off, we've got veterans. These are people who are born before 1945. And this generation is proper old school. And they will certainly still be very happy reading a daily newspaper, getting something in the post, having a face-to-face chat, pandemic permitting. They will listen to the wireless. They will still enjoy terrestrial television. And it will be old-fashioned. However, even this age group, and let's not forget, if he was still alive, David Bowie would be in that age group. Mick Jagger, Keith Richards is in that age group. Yeah. These aren't people sitting in their rocking chairs, slowly mouldering. These are, and therefore, I can tell you that there are hundreds of thousands of people in their 70s who are quite happily embracing technology. Mm-hmm. So, although they are the traditionalists, you can't then necessarily assume that they aren't on digital because they may well be. But clearly, for the vast majority of people today listening to this, there won't be you won't have that many stakeholders or customers who are going to be veterans. I do actually have a few of my own clients who do have veteran clients, but it's a small audience. However, the next one round are the baby boomers. Baby boomers are those who could be from 56 up to 75 years old. And baby boomers are, they're obviously one generation removed from the veterans. They are children of the 60s and the 70s. They, interestingly, are the last generation to really work in offices without computers. So a lot of baby boomers. Now, clearly, we know that lots of business owners, lots of managing directors, lots of senior politicians, lots of people within charities, high up in charities, will all be baby boomers. Baby boomers, I would say, well, they swing both ways. So either they can tend towards I hate the modern world, I wish it would go away. Why can't we just go back to the good old days? Or another group who's saying, look, actually, I really don't care what we used to do. My job is to run my business, make sure it's efficient, and make sure it's always looking to the future. And so baby boomers, there is a real split, a really quite seismic divide. And Beverly, I don't know if you've noticed that with some of your clients.
I was actually just going to say. I mean, I was just going to say actually that I've been working with one or two people recently that fit into this category, and they found it really quite challenging even to change very simple things online, and don't have those basic skills. And these are people that have been running businesses for, like 15 or so years, and which is really quite concerning. So to enable people to sort of to get their voice, you've got to take two steps back, if you like, to give them the basic roots, if you like, like a plant. You've got to have those real good roots to grow all your flowers, and to do this multi-generational thing that we're going to talk about in a minute. So the whole baby boomer and if you like, client base are those people that really need this help and this support.
Absolutely. I mean, a couple of years ago, I think the average age of a company director in this country was 54.
It
means puts them squarely. Well, actually, they're now older Gen Xer, but we've got a lot of business owners, a lot of managers who are baby boomers. And that is where the problem starts, because it is so long since they were educated. It's so long since they were trained up in using technology.
That's right.
They hate it. They simply hate it.
Or do you think they hate it because they don't understand it? It's like trying to give your children maths lessons, isn't it? All these people that have been working at home with their kids going, oh, how the hell do I work that out for that to shape out, this type of thing. And I think it's the same with a lot of those people, is once you show them the real basics and how easy that can be, and you work in that methodical way, is they tend to understand it a little bit more. What I've also found about this age group, David, is working with technology, is that when you talk to this age group, they actually like things in more of a creative way. So they maybe haven't been to university or didn't do all the academics that that the Gen X have had the opportunity to do. But certainly there's been a whole lot of people in that group for me who have found it easier to have it show me rather than write it down and me have to do it myself. They like to be shown.
I would agree. I think another challenge, though, is certainly with the men, is that the first hurdle to get over is getting them to admit they don't know it.
This is true.
And that is a main problem. Thinking about baby boomers, Beverly, is that the phone was the predominant communications channel of choice for everyone. So baby boomers are very, very happy on the phone, and they will continue to do so. and they like, you know, even if you're thinking about a customer, they like to be called. And I actually think that there are often times when I will just pick the phone up, because it's so much easier than writing an email or a long text or whatever. And then you can hear inflection in your voice where you can't in an email.
Yes, that's right. And I think a lot gets lost, doesn't it, on text? We've spoken about this before, how how things just get lost when you've actually in the written word, because you only read things with your own eyes and your own experiences, and words that you or I might use, other people might not use, and they might actually either be offended or, you know, think, oh, that's a really good word. So it's a real challenge to find all the right words in text. But what I personally like doing is I like to see people when I'm talking to them, because I'm a networker, you know, and a mentor. So I like to see people's expressions, things like that. So I love WhatsApp for that, because it's a quick phone call with a video and you can have that nice conversation with somebody. But even that's quite a challenge for some of the baby boomers that I've been working with. They still want to just use the phone.
I know, it's hard. So that's baby boomers, and then we've got Gen X. Now I belong to this generation myself, and we've seen enormous change through our lifetimes. I went to university in the 90s. I didn't touch a computer at all my whole time at university.
Yeah.
I went to university. I didn't have a mobile phone in the 90s. There was no internet when I went to university.
Yes.
I remember first computers at school. I remember the first Walkman. I remember the first mobile phones. I remember LPs, but then cassettes, and then CDs, and then downloads. I've seen it all.
Yeah.
And Gen X, we very much an adaptive generation.
Yeah.
But even there is a big split, because I can tell you, I've got lots and lots of late 40-something friends, and none of them are on social media. None of them at all. Hate it.
Yeah.
Yet, paradoxically, Beverly, the biggest single users of social media, and by social media, I don't include TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat. They are social messaging sites.
Yes.
The biggest users of social media are actually Generation X, who are the middle-aged. But even within that group, there are lots and lots and lots of people who don't use it at all. So you still can't make any assumptions. We've got used as a generation to email. We very much like email. I mean, I've been using Microsoft Outlook for 23 years now. I got a Hotmail account 24 years ago. But what you will see from this slide is that this whole right-hand side of the graphic, or what are called traditional communicators.
Yes.
So, like it or not, mindset on born before 1980 do remember the old world.
Yeah.
And therefore, as someone in my early 50s, I've got just as much in common with my parents who are in their mid 70s. And if my grandparents were still alive and they'd be in their hundreds, I would still have a huge amount in common with them.
Yes, of course.
Far more in common with them than I have with my own children.
Yes.
Because we've all grown up with the basic same rules. You've got TV, radio, newspapers, magazines, telephones. That was it. That's how you communicated. Flip over to the other side, and what you've got are the digital natives.
Yes.
Who your children will be digital natives, my children are digital natives. But again, even within that, there are different grades. So what we've got is that the oldest digital natives, rather horrifically, are actually in their 40s.
Yes.
And the eagle-eyed amongst you will notice that there must be some form of border town between over 1980. So if you were born in 81 or 80 or 79, then surely you must have traits of both. So in fact, there is a name, they're called Zennials.
Zennials, yeah.
What it means is that if you're a millennial and you are 40, you will remember a time before mobiles and computers, but you were tiny. You're reaching back into your very, very dim and distant past when you're very, very little, and you just about remembered at primary school someone got this landline computer linked up to this thing called the internet.
But, oh my goodness, yeah, dialing in. I remember that.
And the older millennials would have picked up messaging and things like that years and years and years ago. Yeah. But the millennials, they actually, and this is really important, this is the largest group of people in the workforce in the UK. Yeah. So even if you're not thinking about them as customers, they will be people working in your business. Yes, of course. So, yeah. They are all wired differently. And millennials, they because they know a world of computers and instant messaging, they were the first people to go onto Facebook, and they were also the first people to come off Facebook. Yeah, so that's again, right. Something very important is millennials aren't on Facebook. They don't use it, not interested in it. It's an old middle-aged, but I think the older millennials will be on it. And my feeling, Beverly, is that the older they get, the more they're likely to start using Facebook rather than other things. We don't know. That it will have to be seen. But I think it's because they know it and they don't have to learn anything else about it. They can go straight back on it and sort of catch up with some, with sort of what's going on. Whereas I think with, which you called social messaging, they may not have that expertise. No. Which is why they'll go back to Facebook, which is what they know. No, absolutely. And I think what we're learning is that the channels very much reflect the people using it, and they were designed. So again, I'm 51. I hate Instagram, but it wasn't designed for me. Therefore, it's not a problem. Doesn't matter. I use the channels I like, and then people, millennials and the Zoomers, Gen Z, they use Instagram because it's just what it was designed for them. Simple as that. It's like I don't understand drill music or jungle, but it wasn't designed for me. No, I like rock and roll. I like indie rock. That was it. That appeals to me because it was designed for me. So millennials and Gen Z, and let's be clear that the very oldest Zoomers are now 21. Yeah. So these are people who don't even remember a world without mobile internet, let alone static internet. And as we go round this left-hand side, I would argue that the brains of these people is changing radically. So your children, Beverly, are millennials, and mine are Zoomers. They're just about actually in that. One of them fits into Z. Yeah. So, but even in, I've seen a difference. So I have a nearly 15-year-old and a nearly 13-year-old, but there was even a change in the 2 years between those two. So when my eldest was at primary school, most of the kids didn't get phones until year 6. Yeah, that's true. And 2 years later, they were getting them in year 4. What you've just said is very true, because I've got one of my children is in 99, the other one's 2000. And although the girls were actually born within sort of a year of each other, they are actually quite different in their approach to how they use social media. Very much so. And what we're seeing now is, of course, that there are lots and lots of children who will have touch screen technology in their prams from 4 or 5 months old.
Yes.
So what it's doing to their brains is changing them.
Yes, of
and
course.
Therefore, we've got this new generation, which is called Generation Alpha.
Yeah.
Which I guess you could also call them the pandemic generation as well, because this may well be the generation who's horrifically lost out because of coronavirus, because their education has been utterly and totally disrupted. But I would argue at Beverly that the majority of businesses that are watching today and we deal with will be dealing with at least 4 of those generations.
Yeah.
And what we know is that takeaway from all of this is that human beings aren't all the same, so you can't treat them the same. Oh, they're young, therefore they'll be on Facebook. Well, no, they're not, because they're not middle-aged. Or they're old and they won't be using Instagram. Well, maybe they do, because they are a creative and they love the interaction of it and the engagement with the young and etc. The takeaway is you cannot make any assumptions.
Yeah.
And increasingly, you need to be engaging with the people that you want to reach, not talking at them. You need to be engaging with. Those 2 words are critical.
Yeah, and there's the other thing as well, which I was reading about the other day with the Generation Alpha, is it's got to be there has to be some progression as well with where we are and moving forward. I think that the term that I read about that generation, the new generation, the Alphas, is they're the transformers. And when you think about, the toy that's the Transformers, they were very much the sort of the techie thing, weren't they? Going back a little bit, and those alphas are those kids that are going to be able to manipulate information and what they're actually using, and be able to to put all those things together. And of course, in the next 10 years, we'll have a whole bunch of new things to use as well in social, digital media and AI. So it's I think it's very exciting to sort of be thinking now about how all that technology is going to change and how you need to plan forward, really.
Absolutely. I know these people will have skill sets. I mean, they will also lack key skill sets. They cannot use a phone. They cannot present. They're not comfortable in conversation. And all of these are negatives, which we will also have to try and deal with in the workplace.
Yeah.
And I've worked with lots of businesses who have staff who simply don't know how to use a phone. And also, the way that they've been brought up with mindfulness means that it's empowering them in many ways.
Yeah.
But then in other ways, that doesn't help in the workplace, because they're so empowered. They join in the first week, and if they haven't been made managing director by Friday, then they've been disrespected.
Yeah, they need to go, because they've got to have so much flexibility. And in actual fact, this absolute point in case here is I was having a conversation with my daughter yesterday, who's just finishing uni and going on to look for a job. And because I'm always busy, I just press the record and send a voice message. And her comment was, "I hate voice messages." And so we've got all that whole thing that I just like to talk to people, basically, and just it's quicker for me to do that. And she will always text back, never the voice message. Isn't that funny?
Yeah,
that's just that whole millennial.
And that's, I've heard that millennials won't use entry phones on flats. So they'll text their friends saying, "Let me in."
Oh, I'm outside. Yeah, absolutely.
They won't order a pizza because they don't feel comfortable. So they'd rather go into an app, and that's why Domino's has done so well.
Yeah.
Because my kids, Domino's is the pizza, but because there's an app and you order on, you don't have to speak to a human being. Yeah. You don't have to phone up. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to Google. You don't have to go on a website. It's all there. And then it tells you that the pizza's being made and delivered.
Yeah, there's a little bot that tells you whereabouts you are with it, and you can do that with delivery. You can do it with the whole thing, and I know the whole food thing for young people is huge. Just being able to sort of to get the app and to do that. And yeah, you are right. Communication skills is going to be quite key. And also moving forward in the place that we are at the moment, if we're all able to get out of this lockdown 3 as we're recording this in June this year, there'll be a lot of resettlement as well of people back into their work environments, and you're going to have to take into consideration this whole this multi-generational approach which you're just about to tell us about.
So that is, I mean, we could talk almost for a whole day around this one slide, Beverly. I mean, there's so much contained within this. And again, I think most business owners haven't really sat down and thought about the implications of all of this because it affects pretty much every part of their business.
It does.
But then if you think about your business or your brand, and you then start thinking about your audiences, not just your customers.
Yeah.
Thinking about, and what we've got here is a list of all the potential audiences that your organization or your business or your charity could have.
Yes.
And all of these people are all aged differently, and they come from those different backgrounds. So although your customers might be old men in their 60s, your staff might be youngsters in their 20s.
Yeah, this is true.
How do you get the most out of your staff? And equally, how do you get your 20-something staff who don't understand how to use a phone to talk to the old men in their 60s who expect someone to give them a phone call?
Cool, yeah.
So another thing which I always say to clients, Beverly, is that you've got to think, who on earth are my stakeholder audiences?
Yeah.
And I know it was a very popular phrase back in the 90s with New Labour and Tony Blair, and everyone's a stakeholder. But I think it's a useful word because we need to get away from customers all the time, because it's not necessarily about customers. It could be about past customers. It could be about prospects. It could be about influencers. It could be about investors, shareholders. These are all people that if you run a business or you have an organization, you have a duty to be able to communicate with those people. And what I can tell you is that the ability to communicate is not particularly good, because big assumptions are made about, we've done it this way forever. I'm going to email everyone. Yeah, but we know that millennials don't like emails because they're not engaging. You can't engage with them. There's no next step. It's a big shift. And that's why I would always argue that you need comms to be top of the agenda with your business plan, and you need someone in comms at the top of your business.
Yeah, because everybody has got to give the same message, haven't they? Regardless of how it's been delivered. And I was talking to a charity about this recently, actually, and saying, if somebody went to one of their locations and asked a question, would all of the staff, which is right at the top of your list there, be able to give the company line? What is the charity line? And it's, I was watching also a video of somebody presenting their business as a sort of a stand-up presentation, if you like. And that was their sort of window, if you like, to prospective staff. And it's whenever you're online, whenever you're getting your message across, this whole issue of communication skills, which I always look at from the psychology point of view as well as how is it actually going, is that everybody's got to be giving that same message. It's got to have that common thread, which is exactly what this presentation today is about, is making sure that that the message is getting to everybody in the right way. So, and choosing your audience as well when you're actually doing that. Thanks, David.
So that's where we're coming up to the end, and it's about then thinking about, I mean, we've covered a huge amount of ground already, and there's probably a huge amount of question marks people have, but there are 4 key things you need to be doing. So number one, anyone running a business needs to think, who are our stakeholder audiences? Who are the people that we need to communicate with in some way, shape, or form?
Yeah.
It could be the local college, it could be the job centre, it could be former staff, it could be people on mailing lists, it could be someone who's in the local newspaper or radio station. There's so many people. So you need to think, who are the people we interface with? Secondly, then, you need to think, okay, roughly speaking, what generations are those people? And I'll give you an example. I've got an asset management client, and I can tell you that client, most of their clients are men in their 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
Therefore, we know that we don't have to bother with any of the youth channels.
Yeah.
We concentrate on LinkedIn and making sure the website. And even more interesting, their website, 2/3 of the traffic to their website is actually from a desktop, which is way the other way from normal, because most websites are now viewed on mobiles, but not in that particular profession. So the number 3 thing to do is they need, if you know who your stakeholder audiences are, and you roughly know what age group and generations they are, you then need to think, okay, what channels will I use?
Yeah.
What content will I use?
Yeah.
What language will I use? And even what customer journey will I need to use to engage them? And those are absolutely critical, because if you start making assumptions, if you've got under 35 target audience and you're using lots of written content, you know they won't engage with it because they don't like written content, because they don't read.
Yes.
And then the final thing is that they need to be revisiting this plan every 6 months, because things are changing. And as you rightly say, Beverly, after the pandemic, things will change again.
Yeah, and you know, David, 2 things there actually that I can sort of think of is things that we've spoken about before. Is, you know, 12 months ago, people didn't have a social media manager. It was a lady in the marketing that did it, or somebody did it for £400 that worked in a, you know, in a marketing company. And now we see it's got to be this whole communications program. And I think the way that you explained it to me recently was like to be thinking about your business as being like a magazine. And I really like that analogy. And it's something, you know, that we've been implementing in both of my businesses, which is, you know, the case of one day there has to be a blog, and the next day there has to be, you know, for your different age group stakeholder plan. It's got to be, you've got to be able to reach them all. So there has to be an advertisement, something to sell, you know, something to an article, hit the pain point, you know, all of those sorts of things, like a magazine. So it's, but it's not all going to be written. Some of it's going to have to be on a WhatsApp group, or, you know, that age group of you know, that you need to hit to get the right media message to them. And that's something that the charity that I was talking to the other day were looking at as well with all their visitors. So yeah,
that's it. I mean, we've covered a huge amount in a very short space of time, and I imagine that lots of people will be slightly overwhelmed, but that is the reality of today's world. It is an overwhelming world. There are lots of parents who don't know how to talk to their kids anymore.
Yeah,
so,
I've heard quite a lot of that actually in lockdown, David.
Yeah. So this is fundamental to business. And I hope people have found this useful, and I hope it will give them food for thought. But doing nothing, as we always say, is not an option.
Yeah, and if you always do the same as you've always done, you're going to get the same response. And you know, now is the time to be thinking about that. And I'll put the details for how to contact you and I in the link for this recording. And just to say thank you very much, David, for coming along and sharing it with us this morning. I love to work with you. It's great fun, and we get such a lot out of it to be able to then take out into the marketplace to help people to do their own jobs better. So thank you very much, and appreciate all of your support.